Hi, everybody. Welcome to English Digest. I'm Tom.
Hi, I'm Stephanie.
This is not only English Digest, but it's also News Digest.
Oh.
We're going to be talking about what's been happening in the news lately. This is an item you may not know much about. It's something about giving patients more autonomy. There's some new legislation that lets patients decide the future of their medical treatment.
Yeah, doesn't this have a lot to do, though, with how they want to die and what they want to have happen to their body, or if they get into a really bad situation, making those choices for the end of their lives?
Yep, something we got to talk about.
Yeah.
Most people don't like to talk about death. It's very taboo to talk about death, but sometimes you do need to discuss it because, we're all going to end up there someday. We're all going to end up in the ground in some form or the other, so we got to think about these things. What happens if you're going to be a vegetable person, or if you're going to be demented, or you're going to have other problems with your memory, Alzheimer's disease, or whatever?
Yeah.
This law will allow you to make that decision ahead of time so you don't have to be on life support for years and years, and we're going to find out what it's all about in just a couple of seconds. It's kind of complicated, so please be patient. We'll try to explain it as clearly as we can.
Okay.
So what we're going to do right now, though, is we're going to listen to our article in its entirety, and then we'll come back to break it down for you.
The grave choice of what to do when a loved one goes on life support can be very hard for any family. However, some retired civil servants in Taiwan are being kept on life support, not from love, but because their children may receive part of the patient's pension and benefit from a high interest rate on savings. To prevent children from taking advantage of this tragic situation, the government has introduced the Patient Autonomy Act. Generally speaking, the law, which was passed in December 2015, gives adult patients the right to create advanced healthcare directives, AHD, concerning their medical care for fear that they become unable to make critical medical decisions. More specifically, it applies to what kind of treatment they would or wouldn't want to receive in the case of 5 medical conditions, namely, terminal disease prognosis, an irreversible coma, a permanent vegetative state, severe dementia, or certain conditions that result in extreme pain. In order to protect doctors from legal trouble, the Act also says that physicians can choose not to enforce a patient's AHD if it goes against their professional judgment, and that family members cannot interfere with the treatment provided. Above all, medical institutions and physicians cannot be prosecuted if they stop treatment. The Patient Autonomy Act is important because it enables unmarried people, same-sex couples, and people with no family to determine their own fate. It also protects a patient's right to know, choose, and refuse medical treatment instead of leaving their fate in others' hands. However, the Act is not a license for euthanasia, as medical professionals are still not allowed to provide a patient with something that would kill them. All that considered, opinions in the medical world regarding the Patient Autonomy Act are mixed. Taiwanese legislators have thus encouraged the Ministry of Health and Welfare to further discuss the AHD enforcement rules in detail before the act officially comes into effect.
Okay, everybody, the time has come for us to discuss the contents of today's lesson. It's our News Digest unit, and the title is Patients Given More Autonomy with New Legislation. That's a title for an article. Actually just means patients are given more autonomy with some new legislation. Now, if you talk about autonomy, that just means the right or the condition to basically govern yourself. In mainland China, there are numerous places that supposedly have autonomy. like the Guangxi, is it Guangxi or Guizhou? I'm not sure. The autonomous region there, which they're supposed to be able to govern themselves here. But here, autonomy, when you talk about a person, that means they're able to make the decisions themselves. They don't have to have other people make those decisions for them.
That's true. I like that. I feel like you should be able to make decisions about your body and your health with your doctor and not have people in your family fighting over you, especially if you're rich. We see a lot of that in the world where kids and relatives will fight about someone who's on life support or in really bad shape because they're wealthy and they want their money. But that's not love. So we're going to talk about what they're doing here with this autonomy and this new legislation called AHD. The grave choice of what to do when a loved one goes on life support can be really hard for family. I actually have a friend right now whose dad is on life support in a hospital. It's very sad, but they'll let him go because they're good people. Now, if it's a grave choice, it just means a very, very serious choice. If you use grave as a noun, here it's an adjective, but if it's a noun, a grave is a place where we bury people who have passed away or who have died. But here it's an adjective, so it means very, very serious. If you're on life support, it means if you aren't in the hospital and connected to machines that can help you breathe and maybe help your heart pump, then you will die. You can't live on your own. It's only with the support of machines that you can survive.
Right, so you've got these respirators and stuff like that that keep you alive. If you didn't have those machines, you would be dead as a doornail. And in any case here, yes, if one goes on life support, it can be very hard for the family. However, some retired civil servants in Taiwan are being kept on life support, not from love, but because their children may receive part of the patient's pension, and they also can benefit from a high interest rate on savings. So these are civil servants who are people who basically worked for the government in government offices or whatever. A lot of people like to have a job as a civil servant. You get some pretty good benefits that way, retirement, health care, vacations, things like that. And so these are civil servants who worked for the government, and now they've got some kind of terrible disease or something like that, or they were in some horrible accident, and they are on life support, but they're still alive, so their children can still receive some of these pensions. A pension, of course, is money you get from your company after you retire.
True.
So that's true. I just said that if you work for the government of Taiwan, if you're a teacher, for example, and you retire, then you get a nice pension, and that can help you with your retirement.
They also have access to really high interest rates on savings accounts, which I think is a really nice benefit that civil servants or government workers get. I've heard of an extremely high interest rate. I don't know if it's true, but they get a much higher rate than most of us get if we have savings accounts at banks. So to prevent children from taking advantage of this tragic situation, it's a very sad situation, and they don't want the children to then go and take advantage of it. Actually, it's a disadvantage to the person who really should be allowed to pass on, to have their children keep their body here so that they can get their hands on money. It's pretty awful.
Yeah, but, if you were in their position, you might be thinking, well, Dad is in a coma and he's never going to wake up.
No.
But, hey, Jianbao is paying for the health care there and we'll get these pensions every month. So, yeah, let's just keep him on there. Let's not pull the plug yet. But
I wouldn't do it.
Yeah, it's a moral question here. But in any case here, yes, they probably think that too many children are doing this because they want the pension and because they want the high interest rate on the savings. And to prevent children from taking advantage of this tragic situation, the government has introduced some new legislation called the Patient Autonomy Act. Let's find out some more about this in the next paragraph. Generally speaking, okay, just in general here, the law, which was passed in December 2015, gives adult patients the right to create advanced healthcare directives, or AHD, concerning their medical care for fear that they may become unable to make critical medical decisions. Okay, that's pretty complicated here, but basically, if you are an adult and you're still okay, you're not sick yet, you can have this advanced health care directives. Advanced just means ahead of time, okay, before it actually happens. Healthcare, of course, has to do with being taken care of by a doctor. And directives just means kind of instructions. So basically, you can basically what this means is that you can set these things up before you get sick. And yeah, we're all going to get sick someday, so you might want to write this down. Yes, when I get that age, I don't want to be on the artificial lung or the breathing machine or whatever. Please do not resuscitate if I have a heart attack or something. Just let me go. You can write those things down and give those instructions before somebody else can make that decision for you.
Yeah, when you're talking about directives, guys, it just means instructions. Instructions, it's another word for instructions. And concerning just means about. So it's all about their medical care when they're unable to make those critical or very, very serious medical decisions. Remember, we talked about someone being a surgeon. It was Ke-pi. We talked about Ke-pi being a surgeon for patients who are in critical condition. Well, if you use this word critical to talk about a decision, it's a decision that's really, really important. So it's a pretty critical decision when if you make one decision, maybe the patient will live, and another decision and they'll die. So sometimes you're not able to make those decisions when you're in the hospital and you're unconscious. So here's something you can think about before you get into that situation. Sit down and write out what you want to have happen to you if you get into this situation. So specifically, it applies to what kind of treatment they would or wouldn't want to receive in the case of 5 medical conditions. We're going to talk about those medical conditions when we get back because there are quite a few of them. But we have something kind of similar in the States called a do not resuscitate order, which you can have filled out, which tells the doctor, you know, if I get into this pretty bad situation and I'm on life support, do not resuscitate means don't put me on those machines. Let me go naturally.
Let me go naturally. Of course, you can make that decision ahead of time. And as Stephanie just said, we'll continue talking about this in just a couple of seconds. Here comes our Chinese teacher.Hi
everyone, my name is Jenny. 今天我们要看的是第4单元。好，这个新闻文摘里面的主题呢，是谈病人的自主权。好，我们先看自主权这个单字 autonomy 其实就是 self-government。如果你用在政治国家来说，这个就是一个自治的、自主的、独立的。那我们来看看下面呢，他就提到，如果你的家人必须要用生命维持器来维持生命的话，那你要怎么做决定？这个真的是很困难。在文章里面他就讲到说，其实有一些状况是跟 civil servants 有关。 civil servants 指的就是公务人员。在台湾的公务人员有一些人呢，现在正在这样的情形里。我们先看这个地方的动词，它写着 are being kept on life support。 are being kept这个时态要注意一下，英文里面当然时态是有一点复杂，有一点困难的。可是如果你看到中间有一个 being， 然后后面再加一个被动的过去分词，那其实这个地方讲的是被动再加进行，也就是说目前的状况是如此，一直的维持在这种状况当中。可是为什么会这样呢？后面跟着写 not from love but because their children may receive part of the patient's pension。 这边牵涉到的句型是 not A but B， 不是什么而是什么。很可悲的就是不是因为他们爱家人，而是因为他们希望从病人他的退休金里面获得好处。 pension 这个单字顺便记得它就是退休金。因为这样的状况，所以政府希望能够有法案成立，这个法案就是 The Patient Autonomy Act。 这个法案我们中文可以翻成病人自主权利法。下面我们就来解释一下，其实这个呢法规是2015年12月的时候通过的。那当时呢是希望说能够让病人可以有什么样的权利呢？ 这里有一个词汇，它叫做 AHD， 这个中文呢翻成预设医疗指示，换句话说是为了做什么？后面就讲到它的目的，主要是希望说在对医疗处理方面他们能够有自主权。这个地方我们看到一个片语 for fear that， 从字面来看就是怕什么，恐怕怎么样，意思就是以免后面的状况会发生。那这个片语呢，有时候你看到的像这里是 for fear that 加子句，那有时候你会看到是 for fear of， 那后面就加名词。
We're going to take a quick break. Stay tuned, we'll be right back.
Okay, welcome back, everybody. We're talking about this new legislation, this new law, which is called the Patient Autonomy Act. And it gives patients the right to create advanced healthcare directives about their future medical care, just in case they are unable to make those decisions themselves eventually, okay? So more specifically, we're going to talk about how it applies to what kinds of treatments. These are treatments that they would or wouldn't want to receive in the case of 5 different medical conditions. A condition, of course, is a situation or a state of something, and these could happen to you. They probably will to a number of you. I shouldn't say this, but maybe some of us will be lucky enough to die in our sleep.
Oh, I'd love that.
And we wouldn't have to deal with these, but unfortunately, this does happen to many people. Let's talk about these things. One of them could be terminal disease prognosis. Terminal means the end. It means death. If you have a terminal illness, that means you're going to die, okay? They can't stop that. Some cases of cancer are like that. Terminal cancer, for example, the doctor can basically say, we can't save you. There's no drugs. It's just a matter of time. That's a terminal disease. Prognosis just means what is expected to happen in the future. So you might ask this of your doctor after the doctor tells you you have some kind of disease. Well, doc, what's the prognosis? What's going to happen in the future? Can we cure this, or am I going to die?
Yeah, that's actually what my friend's father has. He has terminal cancer. Now, if it's an irreversible coma, a coma is when they go unconscious, and we honestly don't know even today whether they can hear us or not. Although when my sister was in a coma, it seemed like she responded to different things. Like I would play music that she really liked, and she would kind of move, and it's kind of interesting. But a coma, you know, sometimes they never come out of them. So irreversible means you can't change it. You can't get them to come out of the coma. They will be in a coma forever. That's a situation where a lot of people will decide to take their loved one off life support. There's also the permanent vegetative state. I know in Taiwan, you like to say vegetable people. We actually don't say that. Although sometimes people will say he's a vegetable, which isn't very polite. But I know in Chinese it's a little different. You say vegetable people. If it's permanent, it's never going to change. So that's a tough one too. That's probably because they've had brain damage. Severe dementia is where not just older people. One of my friends, she was only 54. She got dementia and was gone within a year and a half.
Wow.
They start to forget who they are, and then finally their bodies break down quickly.
You can't make decisions. You forget who you are.
It's horrible.
You have personality change and stuff. That is dementia. And also, we've got some conditions that result in extreme pain. Yes, indeed. Unfortunately, it does happen. Sometimes you get in some kind of accident or you have a disease where basically you're always hurting.
Or burned. Maybe they've been burned badly. That's horrible pain.
Yeah, imagine how some of those people who burned as a result of that fire at that water park.
Yeah.
Was that last year or 2 years ago?
Or the bombing victims.
Absolutely. So these are different conditions in which this law might apply to. And in order to protect doctors from legal trouble, the Act also says that physicians or doctors can choose not to enforce a patient's AHD if it goes against their professional judgment. Okay, so yes, indeed, doctors may decide to stop treatment on the basis of this agreement. But the doctors probably don't want to get in trouble themselves, so to protect those doctors from getting in trouble, it also says that the doctors can choose not to enforce the patient's AHD. And enforce something here just means to observe or to comply with the law, especially if you make someone obey the law. A lot of times people say, well, everybody breaks the traffic laws because the police don't enforce them. They don't punish people for running red lights and stuff like that. That's what a lot of people say. And to a certain extent, that is true.
It's true. And it goes that way with a lot of countries and different laws we have. Now, if they choose not to enforce a patient's AHD, then they are not going to be sued by the family or get into trouble that way. Maybe they think that with a little time, that patient's going to get better and the patient will actually have a pretty good life expectancy. So they won't go with this patient's AHD or enforce it. Family members cannot interfere with the treatment provided. I think this is an important point. If you interfere with something, you prevent something from happening or continuing or being carried out properly. They can't get in between the doctor and the patient. They can't say, oh, we don't want that. The doctor can do what they feel is best. Above all, medical institutions and physicians cannot be prosecuted if they stop treatment. An institution is just an organization, a professional organization usually. And if you're prosecuted, it means someone can take you to court and sue you.
Okay, so the doctors here won't get in trouble here, and the family members can't really do anything about it because it's a legal document. Okay, now the Patient Autonomy Act is important because it enables unmarried people, same-sex couples, and people with no families to determine their own fate. So yes, this does happen sometimes. In those situations, it's up to the immediate family to make those decisions about the sick person. Sometimes people simply are unmarried. They just don't have anybody else to make that decision for them. They might be same-sex couples or gay couples, which at the time of this recording is not legal in Taiwan, so I guess your partner can't make that decision legally. And also, there are people who simply don't have a family, and they can't determine their own fate, so yeah, they can't have other people make those decisions for them, so this law will help them. They can make those decisions ahead of time.
That's important. So it protects a patient's right to know, choose, and refuse medical treatment instead of leaving their fate, what's going to happen to them, in someone else's hands. Now, the act is not a license for euthanasia. Euthanasia is when you want to die because you have some illness or maybe your life's terrible and you get a doctor to give you some sort of drug that stops your heart.
That's right. So here we've got the word license. That usually is some kind of legal permit so that you can do something, a driver's license or a fishing license. But this just means it doesn't give them the right to do euthanasia, which is just killing people, the mercy kill, as we say sometimes, because medical professionals, doctors, nurses, etc., are not allowed to provide a patient with something that would kill them. So they can stop treatment, but they can't give them some kind of poison or something to put them out of their misery. That still is not legal, and I think they're still debating that in the United States, whether it's legal to have assisted suicide.
It's legal in a couple of states.
Okay.
Washington, for one.
Okay.
Now, all that considered, if you take everything we've told you into account, opinions in the medical world regarding the Patient Autonomy Act are mixed. It means some people are for it, they support it, and others are not. And when you talk about the medical world, you're talking about doctors, nurses, hospital administrators, all of those people. Taiwanese legislators have thus encouraged the Ministry of Health and Welfare, that's a department in the government, to further discuss the AHD enforcement rules in detail. They want to make sure everyone understands exactly what's in the law before the law actually takes effect or comes into effect. You can use either phrase. The law will come into effect. The law will be effective. We need to understand things so that we don't break the law and get in trouble.
That's right. So they're still going to debate this, and I'm sure the law will probably be changed here and there in the future as people like the law or they hate the law, etc. So we'll just have to wait and see what happens in the future with this. But hopefully those who have to suffer from dementia or extreme pain or being in a coma and stuff like that will not have to suffer just because the kids want to keep getting the pension. Okay, that brings us to the end of our discussion. We need to listen now to our Chinese teacher.
好，这边谈到 AHD， 它所规划的内容里面，包括的后面这几个重症病患，他们如果有这种状况的时候，是适用这个法案的。那病患呢，之前可以先决定要不要接受什么样的治疗。那这几种病症当中，大家常常都会听到的，可能就是成为植物人的时候 ，a permanent vegetative state， 还有一个dementia， 也就是当你失智的时候。接下来我们再继续看下面呢，他就提到说，对医生来说，因为很多医生呢会被病患提告，所以说他为了保护医生，他这个法案里面也提到了，医生他是可以选择不去执行这个病患的 AHD， 假如说是违背他们专业的判断的话。好，我们注意到哦，这个地方的句型很重要。第一个就是 The Act also says that。 好，刚刚谈的这是第一点，可是其实还没有完，它后面还有第二点。第二点就是说And that family members cannot interfere with the treatment provided。 好，这个 and that， 第二个 that， 它其实后面接的子句是跟在法案提到的内容里，那只是法案内容的第二点。那我们知道，如果你动词后面它的受词是个子句，而且它有连续两个子句的话，要记得第二个子句用来引导的 that不可以省略，一定要保留。这样子当然是为了让你句构更清楚，你可以看得出来它的来龙去脉。第一点，第二点。接下来我们再提到这个病人自主权利法。那病人自主权利法很重要，它的重要性其实还有其他方面。那后面他就提到了包括了 same-sex couples， 也就是同性的伴侣，还有一些人他们是能够决定自己的命运，然后呢保障病患知情选择拒绝医疗治疗的权利。那我们后面有提到，其实有一点是这个法案里面还不能够许可的，那就是 euthanasia。 euthanasia 这个词汇我们常常看到，这就是安乐死。最后这一段我们再看一下，在结论里面呢，他谈到了这么多，考虑到了这么多的情况。好，有一个片语All that considered， 这个片语其实它的意思就是说前面通通都考虑完了。有时候我们在做结语的时候会用到这个片语。另外一个片语常用的就是 all in all， 或者是更简单的 generally。 总言之，我们要下结论了。好，今天的节目就到此为止，我们下次见。
Thanks for joining us, everyone. Remember, you can check this out yourself, do a little bit more research, and find out what is in the AHD, and make some plans for your future. For English Digest, I'm Stephanie.
And I'm Tom. Goodbye.
Bye.